I did not do that. Things are getting too sophisticated here. Good afternoon. I am Gaylord Torrence, Fred and Virginia Merrill, Senior Curator of American Indian Art here at the Nelson-Atkins. And today we have with us 4 distinguished Native American artists. And I'm going to provide a very, very brief introduction for each one, because to really do a full and proper introduction would leave us no time for an actual program. The accomplishments of each one are very many and very great. I'll simply say that all are leaders in the field of contemporary American Indian art. All are represented in major museum and private collections here in Europe and perhaps beyond. All have exhibited extensively and had their work published extensively in scholarly works, popular press, really kind of everywhere. And of course, I don't know this, but I'm told on social media. All have exhibited and had their work involved in prestigious fellowships, grants, awards of various kinds, and all are represented in the Plains Indians Artists of Earth and Sky. And what I'm going to do, just to give you an outline of how we'll proceed today, I'm going to introduce each of our guests individually, as I say, very briefly. Each will then provide a short kind of overview of themselves and their work, and then we'll sit down with some questions. And I have a group of 3 questions that I want to begin with. And while we're working on those, there will be Nelson-Atkins staff kind of moving around and providing pencil and paper for questions that some of you may have. And then we'll proceed to those when we've finished with the 2 or 3 that I've gone through. So with that, let me begin by introducing Rhonda Holy Bear. Rhonda was born in South Dakota in 1959. She's of Lakota heritage. She spent her formative years on the Cheyenne River Sioux Indian Reservation in South Dakota, but moved in her early years to Chicago, which was significant because she spent a good deal of her time exploring the work of her ancestors in the vault locations of the Field Museum, one of the great collections in the country. She's best known for her innovation in the creation of sculptural figures, or sometimes they're referred to as dolls, but they're really a combination of sculpture and traditional techniques and have evolved into a genre of distinct art form. I would also like to mention that she was recently honored in her native South Dakota in a naming ceremony. The translation of her new Lakota name is Making Beauty with Exceptional Skills Woman, which I think is very apt. Kevin Pourier, working in collaboration with his wife, Valerie, began creating buffalo horn jewelry in 1992, and the two have expanded the material to a variety of forms in recent years. They're both of Oglala Lakota heritage and live and work in South Dakota on a ranch just north of the Pine Ridge Reservation and close to the Badlands of South Dakota. For those of you that may not know, bison horn was traditionally used by Plains peoples for a variety of utilitarian items, principally spoons and cups, as well as a number of sacred objects as well. And today, the Pouriers are one of the few Native American artists working in the material. Bentley Spang is a multidisciplinary artist, curator, educator, and writer working in mixed media sculpture, video, performance, and installation works. He's a member of the Northern Cheyenne Nation in Montana, and he chooses to express himself, as I indicated, in a wide variety of mediums and modes of expression, very much as his ancestors did in the past. But his work tends to confront contemporary as well as historical issues, particularly that of cultural identity and place. Jaime Okuma is of Luciano Shoshone Bannock heritage. She lives in California, works in a variety of media, and receiving her greatest recognition as a maker of mixed media doll-like sculptures, traditional beadwork, and most recently exquisitely beaded women's high-fashion designer shoes and boots. And she has also developed her own designer line. So those are our 4 guests. Please join me in welcoming them to Kansas City.
Oh, you look like a friendly crowd. Thank you, because I'm a little bit nervous. I usually spend a lot of time in my studio, so I don't get out to see very many people. So, oha mitaki epe. Waka wayupika wi machiap. Honahe washichia Rhonda Holy Bear e machiap. Hona tokeakche. Yuha chante washdea. Napeo chiush bakishto. Greetings, my friends and relatives. Let me pull up this first slide. I am called Making with Exceptional Skills Woman. I extend my hand to you in a good-hearted way. In English, I am Rhonda Holy Bear. I am from the heart of the Great Plains, home of the sacred pipe. Cheyenne River, South Dakota. I am 54 years old, and I currently reside in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am a Lakota doll artist. I specialize in the creation of highly detailed figures which pay tribute to the history and rich culture of the Plains people. I believe I was born with the predisposition to create in the tradition of my people. However, having a natural feel for art is only half the battle. Developing skills and cultivating a style has come from decades of study, honing my skills, and continuous research. I'd like to talk to you today about my figure on display here at the Nelson Art Museum. This is the last Lakota horse raid. I completed her in 1991. I believe that it is the responsibility of artists to strive to improve. As we advance personally as artists, hopefully we make a contribution to advancing the genre as a whole. We should strive to be a strong link in the chain of our ancestors and pillars of strength for future generations. In doing so, hopefully we bring the art form a little farther along from where it was when we first discovered its magic. The last Lakota horse raid has been a pivotal artwork for me, personally. In addition, it is the embodiment of the contribution I feel compelled to make, both to my people and to my art form. I'd like to show you a few of the objects that inspired me to create the last Lakota horse raid. I'd also like to show you some of the pieces I created along the way, which ultimately culminated in her creation. This is the publication that everyone was talking about at the time, around the 1990s, 80s. It brought the so-called Cheyenne River style to the forefront, and the powerful imagery had quite an effect on me. I was intrigued with how the imagery told a story about Lakota life on the plains. The Lakota wore honor dresses. I would spend many hours talking about these powerful dresses with noted scholar Father Peter J. Powell and my beloved Tunkashala, the late Paul Dyke, painter and Indian art collector. Only a woman who had a male relative who died on the battlefield could wear such a dress. The pictorial painting was a rite and an art style reserved for men only. But the women sometimes shared in the honor and glory by adorning themselves in the clothing of their humble warrior husbands and sons. This particular war honor dress blends both the women's abstract beadwork style and men's pictorial style together. It is thought that the lower portion of the dress may have been a teepee dewliner and the beaded portion a recycled baby carrier. Here you see me working out the ideas that I have been researching. I was getting good at drawing and beading, and although the flat faces are thought to be more traditional, I knew that it was time to break the rules and add some much-needed dimension. For without dimension, my sculpture would lack emotion. So I started carving wood heads with native facial features. Now my figures were starting to take on some soul. The Little Bighorn Tribute. The double-layered war honor dresses, painted muslin underdress with painted skin and beaded yoke overdress. This is a transitional piece. Here I used the 2 beaded war honor dresses to show that we once only went to war with other Plains tribes, and then later we would band together to defeat Custer in the Battle of Greasy Grass. The treaty dress. The signing of treaties with the U.S. government had pretty much become a common occurrence in the lives of the Plains people. Lakotas and whites often exchanged handshakes and gifts during this time. Many United States flags were given as gifts. The Lakota flag war honor dress. We have Lakota military soldiers in our family, including my uncle who was a Lakota code talker. I remember seeing him march in the 4th of July parades. I could hear the Lakota flag song and found myself moved to tears by the warrior story, with all its honor and pageantry. The United States flag has symbols that closely resemble symbols found in Lakota culture. The red stripes are like the coup stripes found on the old shirts and leggings. The stars in the night sky are like our star ancestors in the spirit world. So it is only natural that we would honor the United States flag. Now, when I bring all the figures together, you can see how each creation led to the next until ultimately the masterwork came to be. And here you can see the last Lakota horse raid's beaded cape opened up to reveal its Horse Nation design. The last Lakota, sorry about that, I almost forgot. Wait, hold on, let you go back and see just a second. Okay. The last Lakota horse raid is an iconic Lakota figure with many layers of Lakota symbolic meaning. You can read more about her in the Plains Indian Earth and Sky exhibit book. It's available in the Nelson-Atkins store, and you can purchase it there, and there's a whole story about her in there. And so I'd like to close by saying, may the spirit of the Plains culture live and flourish forever. Michantaki ata Lakota. My heart is all Lakota. Wopila tanka, my friends. Thank you for listening.
Oh, there I am. Hello, my name's Kevin Pourier. I live and work on Pine Ridge Reservation. I'm from the Medicine Root District, which is near the Badlands, on a place where my grandpa and grandma used to live 100 years ago. So anyway, my work is really centered around something that really is a big part for Lakota people. It's the buffalo horn, and our original stories say that we come out of the earth as buffalo people. Our allies called us Pate Oyate. So, I don't know, this whole connection of me working with the buffalo horn and just keep the style I'm working is not a coincidence, I guess. Oh, there's this buffalo lives right over the hill from where me and my wife live. And when we get quiet times, we go over there and sit and watch this buffalo. He must be like 30 years old. But, you know, we still have this connection with such a powerful animal, and it's really a peaceful time for us to take breaks and go see this guy. I also had to do research a lot when I first started. A lot of the art shows that I had attended, they didn't know what my work was like. The experts, the museum creators, they were stunned when they saw my horn spoons and my horn cups, and I really struggled with trying to educate these experts on what they were looking at. Where's Bruce Hartman at? Yeah. So anyway, I did some research at the National Museum of American Indian, and we went up and down the East Coast for a few weeks. And this is one of the pieces that affected me the most and really inspired me. This was made by Crazy Horse, and this was his buffalo horn cup. And it was drilled with holes up the side, around the back, and around the edges. And those represented all the horses that he'd stolen. And about a quarter of the holes that were drilled in there were inlaid with this blue material. And it all came together after we saw this piece, because his uncle was a medicine man, and had given him a blue stone that was blessed in ceremony, and he wore this blue stone tied behind his ear for protection. And this Crazy Horse piece was the only piece that we saw for 3 weeks that was inlaid with the blue color. This is a pair of glasses that are in the exhibit here. I'd always heard about the buffalo horn rim glasses, and so I was trying to see what I could come up with once. And Gaylord ran to my house in the Badlands and stole these from me that time. This is another pair, just experimenting. This is almost every color that I use to inlay with. It has the green is malachite, mother of pearl, coral, lapis, almost everything that we use. This was inspired from the Crazy Horse cup. I hadn't been working with buffalo or doing the buffalo horn cups up to that point, but to carve and inlay the whole thing is really quite a job. And so when I do these, I really have to. It's kind of a winter project. This is a real famous photograph of Sitting Bull, and it's really striking because it's such a sad photograph. And if you look really close in the picture, he has a monarch butterfly in his hatband. And I always think it's such a powerful image because it was taken at a time when we were losing everything. And I think of him stopping and picking up this fragile butterfly wing. He was a medicine man. He probably said a prayer over it and put it in his hatband. And so for this image, I wanted to surround him with butterfly wings, because it reminded me of how when the monarchs go to Mexico and be together with their own kind. So this was kind of like a special gift for that image. And I started doing portraits. So this is mixed blood guy, which is me. I also had experience with monarch butterflies, so I always put that monarch butterfly above my head. And then on the right side, I have little bubbles of things my native relatives say. And then on the other side, I have things my white relatives say to me. And, it's really hurtful. It's about identity and being stuck in the middle. The most interaction I've had with this piece are mostly from children. Adults never really want to go there. This is titled Escher-ish. MC Escher did these designs on flat pieces of paper. I'd like to see him try it on a curved buffalo horn once. This image was, it's a famous photograph too of the railroad used of a couple of guys standing on a hill of millions of buffalo skulls. And it's just a really gross picture, I think. And we have a saying that goes, what happens to the buffalo happens to the people. And so amongst all the buffalo skulls, I mixed in human skulls. This is another piece. You know, I like to, as a contemporary artist, there's a lot of, I want my work to have some kind of power, be able to maybe impact some change. There's a lot of issues in Indian country we need to overcome. And one of them is lateral oppression. It's just been a few generations since we've lost our life ways, and we're having a hard time coming back to those friendly ways, and so we a lot of times treat each other pretty bad. And there's a saying with this piece that goes, once the oppressor has oppressed the people long enough, all they have to do is step aside and we'll oppress each other. And so this was done for an exhibit called FBI Surveillance in Indian Country. And it was, they used to sneak into organizations, and they would, like the Black Panthers and the American Indian Movement, and they would, you know, point at a finger and say, that guy's a FBI guy. And pretty soon everybody was suspicious, and we would break up and fall apart, the group would. And so this is still going on in Indian country today, and you know, it's a conversation piece. It doesn't go well over very well at the markets that I do because it's not real pretty. But you know, it's something that I hope we in our communities can talk about, you know, and it's a way to bring about healing and change. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Good afternoon. That's me right there. Let's see. No. Okay, there it is. Here we go. Okay. I like to work in a lot of different mediums and modes of expression, as Gaylord said, and I'm from the Northern Cheyenne Nation, or we call ourselves Sististas and Suta. And so, you know, that little tidbit of information there, Northern Cheyenne is what we're called, Sististas and Suta is what we call ourselves, is just a little indication of the complexity of my people's experience on this continent, and of a lot of other people's experience. And I don't want to go super deep into that naming thing, but you know, we were called Cheyenne by another group of Native people. I believe it was the Lakota, and we were called Shehena, and then it became Cheyenne. So that's some of what we're dealing with in Indian country is, you know, how do we name ourselves and how do other people call us? You know, and we're sort of, I'm trying to get back to, you know, those kind of sort of ground level issues of how do we identify ourselves. So I spent a lot of time in museum collections over the years, just to try to understand, just like these other artists, try to understand where I'm from and what the artists before me were trying to say, because I'm continuing that with my work very consciously. And so I need to understand my art history, and I'm also influenced by, you know, Western culture as well. I'm not going to show you the piece that's in the show. because I want you to go and see it. And but I'm going to show you a part of the series that the piece belongs to. And this is the Modern Warrior series. And these are war shirts from that series. I've done other objects within that series as well. But the war shirts are, definitely influenced by the war shirts that my relatives made in the past, and there are some in this exhibition. And it's sort of updating that form to talk about what we're dealing with today and what are the things that are important to me and my people today. And I have to say at the outset too that I don't speak for all Cheyennes or Tsistas and Suta, but I just give you my perspective, and that's what I think we do as artists today is we are giving our individual perspectives. But this shirt is war shirt number 2. The one that's in the show right now is war shirt number 1. And this just kind of chronicles the land that I'm from and the place on that land that we occupy. My family occupies, my immediate family. And this house here actually burned down in the 2012 wildfires that came through Montana, in particular the Ash Creek fire. And so here it is forever immortalized in this piece, which, it was a difficult thing to go through these wildfires, but it was some comfort to me to know that that place that was so important to us was, as a family is immortalized in this piece. So, some of the power of art. And the photograph has not always been our best friend in Indian country. It has misdefined us in some ways, but it's a document that's there, and we're coming to terms with that as Indian people. And but this whole series is my way of reclaiming that form, or claiming it to begin with, maybe, but to use it in our way. And I think if they would have had access to photographs in the 1800s, they would have been making garments out of them. They might have transformed them into garments just like this. So this is the second war shirt. That first war shirt, these are all in different collections: National Museum of the American Indian, and then the last one, and then this one's at the Montclair Art Museum. And so I'm also attaching sort of objects to these that have power. So these are objects like the mini disc, the flash, compact flash card that we can use today as living Native people to get sort of our perspective out and to set the record straight. So they become power objects for us. And then I'm trying out all different formats, like the panorama sort of format. And it's also a nod to my people, in that if you look at these objects that are in the show here, there's innovation woven into all of them. They weren't afraid to use materials. They weren't afraid to use things from outside the culture, combine them with things from their experience to talk about that moment. And so that helped me to understand that's some of what I do in my work. So another of this one's at the Denver Art Museum. And this, the last one was called The Great Divide, and it actually deals with this geographical sort of space on our reservation, this big ridge that splits the reservation in two. This one is called National Sacrifice. It talks about the sacrifice that my people made so that we could be on this one place on the earth, our homeland. And just some of the characteristics of that homeland. These are plants that are very important to us, healing plants, some edible plants. And we have this whole knowledge of the plant world still in a lot of tribes, in my tribe and a lot of other tribes, that can contribute to the well-being of everyone. And that's why it's so important that we know, that people know that we still exist and that we're still here, is that we have that kind of knowledge to share. And we also have knowledge that can help in terms of climate change and issues that we're all facing right now. So, I always, call for more sort of opportunity for us to be at these tables of discussion around climate change and current issues, because we have a lot to share. So, and this is the backside of the shirt. These are sort of rocks that come from the reservation and right around my parents' place. The plants are all right around that house that burned down. And this is the ecosystem that they sacrificed so that we could have access to. And it also talks about national sacrifice as, it's also a term that denotes the area, the region that we're in Montana, the region that the reservation is situated in, which is a national sacrifice area. It's called that so that extraction can take place, coal development and other extractive kind of activities. And so we've been battling coal companies for years in my community because we have a huge coal reserve under the reservation there, and we've been trying to keep our land intact for many years, and we're still battling it. So anyway, so then here, hold on just 1 second here. All right. Okay, that's better. Okay, Vine Deloria, the writer Vine Deloria, one of my favorite statements that he made was that the greatest thing that white culture brought the Indians was Ray-Bans, Ray-Ban sunglasses. So one of the best things. So, and gold lame was the other thing. This is some of the performance work that I do. This is a project called Techno Powwow, and I've done 3 of these. They're performance pieces involving dancers and my performance character. This is the Indian of the future, or the blue guy. He's been called a lot of different things. But he's sort of the MC at this futuristic powwow. And I used to go to a lot of raves when I was in grad school. And a friend of mine, Bert Benally, who's an artist as well from the Navajo Nation or the Dene peoples, he introduced me to the rave scene. And I just got this vision stuck in my head of a powwow dancer at a rave. And I couldn't get it out of my head, so I started creating these performance pieces. The first one we did in 2004. We brought together a bunch of different dance forms and powwow dancers and break dancers, Bert and I. And then I did 2 more, and one at Colorado Springs in 2007. And Bert wasn't able to be involved in these last 2, but we did that one where we brought together powwow and break dancers. And then this one is the 3rd one that just happened in April at the University of Wyoming. And it's Techno Powwow number 3. And we brought together powwow break dancers and Maori dancers. So this is some of the powwow dancers, some of the break dancers. The powwow dance group is called the Rocky Mountain Indian Dance Group out of Denver. This is the Soul Mechanics from Colorado Springs. And both of these groups were involved in the 2nd and 3rd Techno Powwows. And so a few more images. And then for this 3rd one, we brought in a new group called Ko Nagate Hayona Culture Group, and they're a group of Maori presenters from Salt Lake City. This is a small version of their group. They have a huge number in their group. So 4 representatives came down and participated in the piece, and basically they get a chance to demonstrate their dance forms, and then we have a battle. So we bring them all together and they battle each other. They have to do each other's dance moves. They have to try out each other's music, and it's really an amazing moment. I'm not a choreographer, so I just create this structure for them to do what they do best within. So you can kind of see some of the stuff that takes place, and it's this cross-cultural, piece that I think everyone walks away, having learned something a little bit new about their dance form, and definitely there's a lot of interaction. This is one of the Maori dancers, and the break dancer went right through his legs while he was dancing. And then at the end, I bring everybody into the piece, the whole audience, and so they get to try out, and we do a round dance, and then they get to try out breakdance moves and stuff. And this was a young man that just got caught up in the energy of it. So anyway, that's what I do.
Good afternoon. My name is Jaime Okuma, and I am a Shoshone-Bannock Liseño, and I come from the Wasik clan from the La Jolla Indian Reservation in San Diego County, California. I live there with my husband and 2 boys. I have been creating art all my life and became a full-time professional artist at the age of 18. Up until about 3 years ago, I was strictly creating the mixed media sculptures you see here. This piece is a Northern Fancy War Dancer. It's about 26 inches tall and took around 6 months to complete. One afternoon, while shopping online, my husband, Mom, and I were just shooting the breeze, talking about just random stuff. And I was discussing my frustration with my time management. These pieces take forever. And I felt like I wasn't really being challenged anymore, and frankly, I was burned out. I've been doing them for about 14 years. And so what came out of that conversation with my family are the latest pieces you see here. These can be seen here at the museum, and in the current exhibition are the shoes. In 2011, the Nelson-Atkins purchased my very first pair here, titled Adaptation. At the time, I did not know if these would be the only pair or if they were going to be received well by collectors and native art enthusiasts. All I did know was that this was absolutely the most greatest feeling I had had in a long time working. I was challenged again. I felt comfortable in the new direction that I had created for myself. And so thank you again to Nelson-Atkins and especially to Mr. Torrence for taking the plunge and acquiring this piece here, Adaptation. The number one question I get is how do you do it? How do you bead how do you bead? And so the next few slides we'll go over the process of this piece here that's in the exhibition. There's a blank canvas, and I didn't have any idea as far as design. I just kind of started beading. And the shoe is in a horse shoe shape to begin with, and so I thought it was very appropriate to put a horse on it. And so these are my prelim sketches. And there's beading around the toe, and it all is beaded directly to the shoe. This point of the process, this is right in a concave curve. I had never beaded anything so difficult, and the leather is very, very tough. I thought, what the hell did I get myself into? I wasn't liking how it was coming along. Nothing looked right. I wasn't really clear with my color choices, and at this point, there's way too much to rip out to start over, which we do a lot. So I realized I had wasted way too many months already on this piece, and I wasn't going to waste any more time on it. So I put them away without having any intention of finishing them. 6 months later, and at this point I was just concentrating on my clothing, so I wasn't really beading anything. I received a phone call from the videographer for this exhibition, and because of a lack of communication, we just kind of missed each other. He said, "Hey, I'm going to be there in a couple of days." And I really don't have a house, I have a studio. I kind of live in it. So it's a mess with everything. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have time to get anything figured out, because he had mentioned that he had wanted to film me in the process of beading, and I didn't have anything. So I thought, I'll pull these out, and I'll kind of just wing it and pretend I'm beading on it, because it was so hard. So while we were filming, I started beading, and I got through that little part, the hardest part that I thought I wasn't able to. And so had I had notice and figured out something else to do, these probably wouldn't exist, because I would have figured out something else to bead for him. And so because of this exhibition, these shoes exist. And in closing, the shoes, in my view, are a tangible view of survival, adaptation, a purposeful and meaningful blending of traditional and contemporary thoughts, cultures, and ideas. Thank you.
Thought I'd pass these out. Before we actually get started with questions, there are just a couple of things I want to mention. Speaking of Ray-Ban sunglasses, you can't see this because of the way Kevin's glasses are oriented in the exhibition, but on the back side, he's inlaid the words Res-Ban. Kind of nice. And just one other thing, I cannot resist this story. I know stories about all of these people, which I promise not to tell, but there's one that Bentley, I don't believe, knows. It's about a year and a half ago, I was having lunch with David Bland, who's a member of our community. And he has a great interest in contemporary American Indian art and works in Indian country, in housing. And I mentioned that the museum had just commissioned a piece by Bentley Spang. And he brightened up, and then he looked strange, and he said, "Oh, Bentley Spang." He said, "I owe that man one of the most wonderful days of my life, and also the most harrowing." I said, "What are you talking about?" Well, Bentley provided horseback tours of the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. And the two of them went out for a day, and he said it was amazing. And what brought this to mind was Bentley's shirt with all of the intricate plants and flowers. And he said we covered so many miles, and I came away understanding so much about the prairie and all of the things that grew there, and Bentley's knowledge was vast. Then we looked at our soup for a while, and he said, however, he said there was no precipice so steep that Bentley would not ride down it. And he said, I didn't lose my seat, I kept it. We went down things that had to be an 80% grade, straight down, no hesitation. He said, I've never so terrified in my life. We looked at our soup some more, and he said, what made it worse was that Bentley didn't even bother to use a saddle. So, yeah, there are other lives here as well, so I'll stop with that. I'm going to begin with just a few questions, and the first is, it's a terrible question, and I say that because I had my beginnings as an artist, and this is the kind of question that when someone would ask me, I would roll my eyes, because it's in a way a simple question, and it's also extremely complex. And what it is what I would like to know, what is it that led you, each of you, and first inspired you to become artists? We're all looking at our soup. Anyone?
Oh, I'll go first. I think I mentioned this morning at brunch, it was in my DNA. From, as you can see in the exhibition, those are our people, our relatives, and so it's kind of just in our blood. And my grandmother was a painter. My mom worked at MCA Records in the 70s as a graphic designer. So I grew up with that. She designed covers for The Who, Leonard Skinner, Sonny and Cher. So I don't know why that crazy woman left her job to have me. So after that, she became a freelance graphic designer. So yeah, it's just, for me, it's been in my life since I was born.
Yeah, I think, I grew up around it. My mom was kind of she drew a lot and painted some, and, there was just a lot of creative activity around me all the time. I had aunts that beaded, and, I was just always immersed in art growing up in that community. And even when we moved away, my family lived in Alaska for a couple years, and in Portland and Seattle, and we always wound up around artists. It was just always, you were always trying to find other natives in these places, off the reservation, so you could feel comfortable. And there was always artists in the mix. So I just saw a lot of art growing up, and but I never really thought I was going to be, someday I'm going to be an artist and blah, blah, blah. It just sort of found me later on in life, and I really feel like I was sort of led to it, and here I am, so.
Nothing at all like that for me. Yeah, I didn't start making art until I was like 30 years old. I had to get all the wildlife out of my life first. So I think by the time I changed my life, like when I was 30, I don't know why I started carving, but I just started doing some carving because my friends were, and it saved my life. And and then just meeting some of the coolest people in the business of art, and has really inspired me. Hanging out with artists, talking about cool ideas and where we're going and who we are, and it's just really an exciting thing, and it's just really been fun. So that's about me.
I've always been creative. When I was a little girl, all I liked to do was play. And so I think it's just kind of an extension of that, just like never wanting to grow up and always wanting to spend my time creating. And I had all kinds of talent, lots of talent. I don't just make figures, I'm also a singer. And so, whatever, is creative, I was always like in the middle of all of it. And but I also come from a family that had grandmothers that were great beaders, and and I'm very, very close to my grandmother, or was close to her when she was alive, and so a lot of the Lakota stories, were always there when I was a little girl, and I was really, really touched and moved by them. So when I left the reservation, a lot of our cultural objects weren't there on the reservation anymore. I could see maybe a few of the things when people came out for the powwows and the gatherings and things like that. I always wished I could get near them and be close to them. And when I went to Chicago, I went to the Field Museum, and there was our people's treasure. And I saw all of the mannequins in the cases, and I would just go there on free nights, and I would just spend my time there until eventually I got into the vaults and I could actually hold the objects in my hands. And so it was pretty powerful, pretty moving for me. And so that's how everything kind of got started. I hung out with stuffy scholars and started researching, and just found my calling. And so it's just something that I always had. It was always something that was inside of me that I just I developed it over time, and I just evolved into the person that I am now.
Thanks. You all maintain connections with earlier traditions in your work, one way or another. And that's true with many Native American artists working today. And I'm wondering if you would speak in some depth about your own connections to earlier traditions, or what you see perhaps in some of your colleague artists' work. But that interface, that connection between earlier traditional forms and what is occurring now in contemporary Plains art.
I think for me, especially since there's so much of the buffalo horn things and collections in this exhibit here, a lot of those things that were made back then were made out of love for our relatives. And I think that's a real powerful force, is our love for our relatives. And so trying to make a piece of art today as a human being that has power, that's not just for market or, you know, for the next sale, but to also say who I am as a 21st century person is always a challenge. And so I look at these pieces in this exhibit, and those are my relatives' stories. And, you know, I don't want to retell that story today. I mean, I have chased buffalo on horses before. I could probably do Indians on buffalo, or chasing buffalo, but, you know, I have my own experiences today. And so for me, using the buffalo horn and telling my story is really important.
I think what Kevin said about the love piece, you know, I think is really kind of what hit me too. Once I went into collections, I did a Smithsonian Fellowship back in '94, and it was my first time in any collection kind of situation, and that's what I came away with. I mean, just going into those collections, you know, I had to prepare myself in a certain way. After talking to my elders and stuff, I had to go in, and they gave me the way and the protocol to deal with that. And you know, those rooms, there's a lot of stuff going on in there, but one of the things I came away with was, you know, how much we loved each other, because like Kevin said, you know, they would make this stuff and then they would give it to each other, you know, to honor each other, to talk about each other's exploits, and to sort of, you know, tell people about how amazing this person was, and to protect them as well. You know, these objects were made to protect people. So, so that's what I came away with. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of information about, you know, what the pieces represented necessarily, but just being around those works was important to me. Just being in the presence of them was really important. And so so to be able to show with those pieces is really an honor every time I get a chance to show with the work of my relatives in the past. And I always make that distinction between relatives and ancestors, just for myself, because ancestor, that's a true term, but there's this separation that kind of creates for me sort of in my head. So, and those are my relatives. Those are my uncles and aunts and cousins and grandmas and grandpas that created those pieces. So.
More? Okay. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about, especially in relation to what Bentley and Kevin has just related, the interface between what you create and the realities of working within the milieu of an art market, and how you navigate, how you negotiate your ideas that you're working with, the connection to perhaps people purchasing your work that might not understand all that goes into it. What are some of the difficulties or some of the advantages, some of the joys that you see in having what you create move into the larger world of a variety of art markets?
That's a big question.
Yeah, well, warned you.
For me, I think kind of the frustrating part of being a native artist is Sometimes I feel like I'm in a box. It's hard to get recognized as, I guess, I just feel like there's all these standards and rules and ways that we're expected or supposed to do things, I think. And I remember one show, one of the people on the standards committee asked me if I used traditional hide glue or whatever for my inlays. And I just thought, you know, I'm a contemporary person. I want to use epoxy. And, you know, I mean, you look at all the other artists around the world and they can do anything. I mean, and it's acceptable, but for a native artist to take that move in the market, the markets drive me crazy, the business, you know, but in a way it kind of pushes me to push those boundaries, step out of them boxes. And I like to shock people sometimes with some of the things I do, so that's always fun.
I find that when I create the figures, I'm usually working through something that's really, really personal to me. And so I'm evolving as a person. I'm working, it's like therapy. I'm like working through all kinds of stuff that happened on the reservation when I was growing up there. Because, I mean, it's not just, you know, we're not just sitting there beating. There's like a lot of dysfunction that was left over and still exists today. And so I'm working through a lot of stuff like that. And so I'll be like going through some of the pieces that I've made, and I'll look back and I'll remember some of the things that I was thinking. And so when I'm like making these pieces, the buyer gets the byproduct of what I created, but what I get is I have evolved to the next stage, and I keep evolving like spiritually. And so that's like the strength in the piece, and that's why I can give them away. I can sell them because I've got the other part of it. So you get, you know, my emotions, all of my things, all of the things that I was working through. You get that in a beautiful piece of work. And often what I'll find is that the people who are looking at it, if I've really poured my heart into it, that they feel that from it, from the piece. They're moved by the piece because I've worked through all of these things, and that's real. And so that I don't have any problem letting go with, you know, of the pieces, you know, after that, because hopefully I've become a better person after I've completed the piece.
I guess my process is really simple. I feel, since I've been doing this forever, I feel more of a machine. I really don't think too much about what I'm going to do or how. I just want to do it. I can envision something, and I enjoy what I do so much. Everything else kind of just gets put aside, and then, you know, a few months later, then something like that comes up.
I think you know, there's a kind of an issue called authenticity that that I bump up against all the time as a native artist, and you know, I've tried to take the time to understand why that even exists. You know, what is that all about? And so, you know, along with sort of looking at the work of my relatives in the past, I've also looked at the writing and the sort of whole structure around us as Native people that has led to sort of, you know, why do we need to determine whether something's authentic or not, you know? Because if you look at that artwork that's in this show and other shows and collections from my relatives, you'll see that they had no concerns about that. You'll see that they just expressed their experience in the moment with what was around them, you know, what was right in front of them. And so they had no concern about, you know, whether it fit a standard of whatever, except the standards that were within their community. You know, the artists that were creating the guilds, the beadworkers and the painters and stuff, those were the standards that they were interested in. And those standards allowed for them to use whatever materials you know, they needed to do to respond to that. So it led me to that, that conclusion that, you know, I'm in this time period, here's this material, and this is important to me, so I'm going to use this because, you know, I'm continuing this way of making, you know, that's thousands of years old, so.
You know, I would just say, in my experience, having lots of discussions with collectors over the years, there is a certain phenomena that oftentimes collectors will decide what the cutoff point is in terms of what's authentic and what isn't. And for some people it might be 1820 or 1890 or 1910. Or, it's a very, very strange construct. And in my first years in the field, I was working primarily with historical material. I was not engaged with native peoples. And, but I did know a lot of collectors, and there was this kind of dialogue that would occur. And I would say that the moment that I had my first experience working in a native community, all of those distinctions completely evaporated, because I found that it was not a part of traditional people's construct. You know, what is authentic, what is not. It was an evolving, dynamic culture, evolving, dynamic works of art, continuation of meanings and ideas. But it was all very, very much alive. And I would say that that formed a good deal of what the thinking was in the creation of this exhibition, The Plains Indians, that it's always been a culture of change, and the art has reflected that, and it's never stopped from the time that it began. Do we have time for one more question, or do we, one more? Okay. How do you feel, when I was curating this exhibition, one of the first questions that I confronted was, of course, what constitutes Plains Indian art? Not exactly authenticity, but culturally and artistically, where are the boundaries? And as I explored the field, I began to encounter native peoples that are not of Plains heritage, sometimes far removed, that have adopted traditional Plains ways of working, either in form or mostly in form, sometimes in idea. What do you think of that aspect of the field today? I don't know that that was a very well-posed question, but
I think that the Plains culture is really kind of idealized out there, you know, in the world, in particular, because we're like from the heart of the Plains, and so when people think about Plains Indians, they think about the war bonnets and the beadwork and the fringe and the horses and things like that, and it's I think that's like just really kind of ideal, and but I also think that we also come from a very powerful culture whose teachings are still very much alive and relevant today. And so I think that they're just drawn to it. It would be like kind of, it's basically, it's really, it's a spiritual religion. And so its power, it just kind of just brings people in. And so I would imagine that they admire the culture very much and long to be part of it. And can't blame them. It's great.
Well, I have to say nobody rocks the Ray-Bans like the Plains people, so. Right, Kevin?
Res-bands.
Yeah, Res-bands, excuse me. No, I think, yeah, it's, I mean, you know, the native experience, what I've come to understand is just that, you know, rather than having that be a limiting term, or Plains being a limiting term, or Southwest art being a limiting term, if we turn that around and we look at the complexity of those places, the Native experience is, for me, is everything from someone on the reservation who's spent their whole lives there and left a few times to, those people that were adopted out and don't know who their families are and can't reconnect with their families, but know that they're Native. And, so that's the whole spectrum of the Native experience right there. And so the same thing, all of that happens in the plains, in the Southwest, in the Northeast. That experience happens everywhere. So, if we start to broaden that, then it sort of gets to the complexity of our experience in a really fascinating way. And then it also drops us into this category called human. We all of us have complex backgrounds, and our families come from, Europe, or, I have French blood flowing through my veins. I have, just a whole group of different cultures that I'm made up of, and that's the nature of human experience. So, and that's what we're a product of, I think, is we're human beings from these groups that sort of held together in a special way and that had special things that held us together, but we're also human as well. So
it's also an art form that's extremely powerful. It's like when I was talking about how it heals me, it heals other people who want to be part of it too. It has a lot of symbolism behind it, and it really, the art has the power to heal spiritually. So that's why I think they're drawn to it. It's very powerful.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Give me just a moment, please. Okay. These are for individuals. This is a question for Rhonda. What is the significance of the last horse raid?
Yeah, I had only about the 6 or 7 minutes up there, and she has, as I was saying, lots of symbols that are in there. When you were watching the slides, you don't see the dolls in person, but the very early ones were about as tall as this bottle. And then when you go through the exhibit, you'll actually see her, and she's about 30 inches tall, and she's all hand carved out of wood. And there's like all these symbols. Like as I was growing, I started to collect all of the symbolism, and she just kind of just came together. And so I used all of these symbols, like her body entirely carved out of wood. She's carved out of pine and bass. And where we're from, we don't have like a whole lot of trees, where you could just kind of sit down and do all this sculpture. There's, a few trees, and we did, a few wood sculptures and a few stone things, and back in, in the days, because we were a nomadic culture, we couldn't take big stone sculptures with us, and follow the buffalo. So I used the tree to represent the people. To represent the family, that we have roots like a tree, deep roots that go way, way back. And we have branches that branch out into families, large families. And then that overall tree represents the entire people. And then eventually it represents the entire universe filled with people. And I left her color light, because some of the pieces I paint, but this particular piece I left light because I also realized that once I had created the wood figure, that I wanted her to have more symbolism. So I left her skin very, very light to be reminiscent of the white buffalo woman who brought us the sacred pipe. So her face is round like the disc, like the sun, like the moon. And I wanted her to have light because she came from light. her father was the sun and her mother was the moon, and she came from the stars. And so I wanted her to be radiant, and so I left her form like that. So she's almost like a kind of a spirit, or like a holy figure. And then I made her dress white, because when she came to us, she was wearing a white dress, a pure white dress. So that all is reminiscent of her and reminiscent of the white buffalo, which she was. She was the white buffalo calf. And then the figures I made in all that full-blown color to represent the last Lakota horse raid, meaning the end of that era in our culture, where we weren't going to be stealing horses from one another or anything. We were going to become idle and live on the reservations. And so that scene is put across her dress, and so that represents the past, but she represents the renewed hope that the Buffalo woman brought to us. And it also reminds us that we're living in reservation times, and as I was saying, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction that happened after. It's the aftermath of what happened to a people. And so it is a reminder, she's a reminder that we should bring order to our lives and that we should follow the stars, because the stars are our ancestors, and that we follow those stars in a pattern of order. And so it's her calling the people back to order, to follow everything in order to bring our culture back to its strong point again. So that's what the symbolism behind that is. The war on her dress again also is the women could wear these pictorial forms if they had a husband, son, brother who died on the battlefield. Then they got to take part, in their glory, as I was saying. And so she carries a horse stick in her hand, and those would have been all things that her husband or a loved one would have carried in his hand. The purse in her hand is kind of a new way of talking or saying that the white buffalo woman was bringing us a gift. And so that's kind of like the new container of the gift of the seven rights of the Lakota people. And then and then I also just wanted to show off all the woman's skills, all the tanning hides, and all the beautiful beadwork that the grandmothers made. And I wanted to bring all of that specialness, put it all into one beautiful piece of work. And that's how it all came about.
Thank you. It's a question for Jamie. Do you use porcupine quills in your art at all, or is your work exclusively beadwork?
Oh no, I've done quite a bit of quill work, and in fact I should have showed one of the images, but there are a pair of Louboutins that I quilled on, so yes.
Yes. Where do you get porcupine quills in California?
Internet.
So here's a question that this is for any of the panelists. Explain the importance of the pipe.
No.
Here's one for Kevin. Where do you get the buffalo horns?
From Buffalo. No, I live way out in the country, and I attended the National Bison Association conference a few years ago, and there was over 1,000 buffalo ranchers, a couple from every state, and it's The hard thing for me is that the horn caps that I use have to come off of large bull buffalo, and those, they don't let them get that old anymore because they either stay with the herd or they become trophy buffaloes. So it takes longer for me to, like if I make a belt or a horn cup or spoon that needs the big thick horns, it can take 3 to 4 years to find a good material to work with. And it's just, and now it's, I had one woman almost slap me once because a buffalo had to die for me to get to use my material. And I had to stop her and tell her that, you know, it's just going back to the ways of where we used to use everything. Nothing was ever thrown away. I mean, the horn caps were used for cups and spoons. And this is what I'm doing today, because a lot of those ranchers will throw those horn caps away and in the landfill. So my work is green.
Are any of you involved in encouraging youth of all backgrounds to express themselves through art?
Me.
Me?
Yeah, I used to do a youth project, a youth arts initiative on my reservation called Youth RAP, and RAP is an acronym for Restoration Art Project. And I worked with Penn State University and University of Wisconsin, which is my alma mater, and worked with landscape architects who had been coming out to my reservation. Penn State University has what's called the American Indian Housing Initiative, and anyway, I worked with them. We got a grant, and I always wanted to do an initiative, you know, to help the youth on my reservation, because art, just like Rhonda was saying, you know, it's a healing thing for me. The process of creating is very healing, and was for my relatives in the past as well. So I wanted to help them, introduce them to that potential healing in the creative process, so that they would have a strategy to deal with the difficulties that they're dealing with in the community. You know, teen suicide is the highest in any country of any group in this country, and you know, we're dealing with a lot of difficult issues in our community that are the byproduct of cultural grief and other issues. But anyway, so they don't have a lot of strategies. And so I wanted to give them, you know, to help them see that the creative process, they can use that anywhere. They can do drawings, they can do any kind of creative work, and that can help them sort of deal with difficult moments in their life. And so we did this project for 3 years. I worked with the Boys and Girls Club there in Lame Deer, Montana on my reservation, and then brought them together with the college students from Penn State. And we did a courtyard for one of the buildings that Penn State and these other universities created. And we put, they came up with words that described themselves, these students, and then we etched them into these rocks and then put them into this kind of courtyard space that we designed with them. And it was like these places people could sit had these words like brave and intellectual and things like that. And they were words that anybody in the community could come into that space and, you know, relate to. And so that courtyard is still there. It's on the Tribal College campus, Chief Dull Knife campus. That's the Tribal College on our reservation. And anyway, I worked with them for 3 years, and I run into those kids all the time. You know, it's a great feeling to see them. And some of them have gone on and done some, you know, gone into school. One of them is an architecture student now, just finishing up at the University of Montana. And so, yeah, I think it's really important. People pulled me up, you know, in the arts, other Native people, and so you know, it's important to give that hand up as well. So
I've also.
Sorry. Ladies first. I just wanted to say that I would love to teach a group of young girls the traditional skills, and I would love to be able to talk to them and do something really good with them. That would be wonderful. So if anybody knows of any projects out there where I could do that, I would be totally open to it.
Well, we've gone a little beyond our allotted time, and I certainly didn't want to stop this. And so I have one last question, which is either easy or not. What is your favorite object in the exhibition?
Mine's the Kay Branley's quilled and incised pouch. I don't know, I didn't even...
It's a tobacco bag.
Tobacco bag.
That is,
yeah.
in the first part of the exhibition, quilled and painted up above. And it's collected in 1721. And
It's incredible, and I can't even begin to imagine how long that piece took. It's perfect, every part of it. So if you get a chance, be sure to see that piece.
Yeah, next.
Oh, you want me to go? I think the shield, the oak, the shield that was, that you showed me, that was for the Cheyenne warrior oak. So, yeah, just really powerful. Shields are just, yeah, they're amazing objects, and yeah, just the story behind that was amazing.
I think mine is the, right at the first, the stone buffalo with no legs. It's so abstract and so, it could be a piece that was made yesterday. It's so contemporary looking.
But there were several things in the show that I just really, really loved, and it was so wonderful to be able to see them in person. I would say the one thing that really stands out to me would be the Dakota cradle board with all the quill work and all the pictorials on it, and that one really stands out to me. But also the painted robe, which was collected by Carl Bodmer. Those two pieces really stick out to me. It was a wonderful show.
Well, thank you all very, very much. Thank you for coming.